more evil.
When Total Drama Island first premiered, it was a spoof of reality TV, animated to really bring out the absurdity of its stereotypical characters and the challenges they had to endure. When Pahkitew Island came out, they decided to really amp up the animated aspect to create the most absolutely absurd season of the series, and the characters follow suit. But who's relatively clean-handed and who literally tried to nuke the entire island? Hey guys, I'm Brad with WickedBinge, and this is every Total Drama Pahkitew Island contestant's worst deed, ranked. Like always, we're gonna start with the characters who don't have any particularly egregious sins, at least not to our knowledge. These characters are the innocent. First, we have Ella. Her worst deed, if you can call it that, is singing. Being that she's a Disney princess parody, Ella is always a happy camper and greatly enjoys showing this with her spontaneous musical performances with woodland creatures.
Who'd like to hear a song?
Her happiness ticked Chris off so much that he threatened to have her booted if she didn't shut up, which, unfortunately, she fails to comply with. On second thought, given how gentle her nature is, maybe it's very fortunate she got a pretty early boot. Now we go from Sound of Music to sound effects. Beardo's worst deed is not being super helpful. Think of Beardo like the poor man's bee, rather than being a man of few words who makes up for it with extremely high intellect and inventing skills. Beardo's a man of few words who makes up for it with sound effects. Now, to the man's credit, they are really good sound effects, but that doesn't change the fact that he doesn't really do anything helpful for his team.
So long, Beardo.
Beardo is just there, in every sense of the word. At least he said it was nice to meet everyone though. What a nice guy. Last of the totally innocent characters is Leonard, who's guilty of being both unhelpful and delusional. Like Beardo, Leonard is just doing his own thing. Just instead of being a master of sound effects, Leonard is a master of wizardry. But in real life, his spells aren't really giving his team a power-up or an XP boost or whatever third thing he can do in his tabletop RPG land. That said, while he was ultimately no help to his team, he wasn't really hurting anyone. Dude just wanted to roleplay as a wizard on TV. And you know what? I respect that. That takes some serious self-confidence, even if it's paired with total delusion. Next are the characters whose deeds are noticeable, but not the absolute worst. These are the not-so-bad deeds. Let's kick off this category with Sammy's worst deed, getting Amy eliminated. Under normal circumstances, we'd be putting this one way higher on the list. After all, from an objective standpoint, Sammy is weaponizing her sister's allergic reaction to trick others into thinking she's the one they hate.
I'm tired of you taking credit for things that I do.
Ignoring the obvious physical pain, this is a deception of her sister and her entire team. So the question remains, why is this deed so low? Well, we left one detail out. Amy is the worst. We'll get to her later on. But while deception and borderline assault aren't good by any means, if they're done to an extremely abusive family member, you're gonna be hard-pressed getting us to blame you for it. Next is our boy Rodney, whose worst deed is being a simp. Okay, morally speaking, it could be argued there's nothing wrong with being a simp to a certain degree. The dude's not buying anybody's bathwater at least. But Rodney takes it to a different kind of down bad, falling in love with literally any woman who so much as blinks in his general direction.
I've never felt this way before.
To his credit, he isn't really hurting anyone, unless you count the psyches of any woman who's tried to figure out what he's trying to say to them. But if Rodney were getting ladies and dumping them left and right, he'd be a legit heartbreaker. And that is kinda what he thinks he's doing. So we gotta give this hopeless romantic a couple of sin points. Zombies beware, because the next entry is Sean, whose overboard anti-zombie precautions are his worst deed. Paranoia is a real pain in the butt. It can also make people perceive you as a pain in the butt, which Sean knows all too well. While he does mean well with the whole determined to prevent a zombie apocalypse thing, Sean can definitely go a bit overboard.
Listen, zombie apocalypse, here!
This is most memorable in one challenge where he finds himself pretending Jasmine is a zombie to make sure nobody suspects foul play due to their newfound connection, resulting in him knocking her into a lake. We'd spend more time on this, but let's move on to Jasmine, and her worst deed is being petty to Sean. This one might be a reach, but we found it kinda annoying, so give us your ear for a second. You know the deed we literally just talked about, where Sean knocked Jasmine into a lake? Well, it's important to remember clear that despite their blossoming relationship, they are on different teams, and Jasmine herself literally asked Sean to take the challenge seriously, so it would be a fair game.
I want you to stay away from me. We clear?
So why, pray tell, are you giving them the cold shoulder when all this man did was play the game like you asked him to? Seriously, did we miss something here? I know you're tall, Jasmine, but that's no right to be on such a high horse about this. Nothing compares to the remaining portion of the campers. We now venture into the really bad deeds. We'll start the section off with Sky, whose worst deed is taking advantage of Dave. Now, we're not trying to victim blame here. Dave is kind of a creep, and his refusal to listen to Sky's disinterest in him is painful, but that's no excuse for Sky kissing this man to make him into her manservant. It gets worse when Chris misleads him into thinking she still has a boyfriend, even though they actually broke up before her time on the show. The only reason we're not putting this one higher is because, like with Sammy earlier, we just feel really bad for what poor Sky has to deal with. But given the context of each, this deed is just a little bit worse. The girl was too nice for her own good. Next, we have Max, who's guilty of amateur supervillainy. Like we said before in a previous video, Max is less of a full-on villain and more of a kid playing pretend. The only issue is that his pretend role is all too real in his own mind. He treats Scarlet as a minion throughout the season, shows willingness to trap his fellow players in traps that would be cruel even for animals, and has an overall enthusiasm for any trouble he actually does succeed in causing.
Time to eat it!
He's not an entirely bad guy, able to get along with some of the others decently well, and even having a soft spot for babies, but he's still one to keep an eye on, though this is balanced out by his best deed, which is carrying this entire season on his back. Rounding out the category is Chauffeur, whose worst deed was attempted identity theft. One of very few people with a motive that isn't the prize money, Topher wanted to take Chris's job as a host of Total Drama. It's not totally clear whether he's actually as huge of a Chris fan as he lets on. Sure, he cosplays him 24/7 and shows a lot of respect, but he also can be pretty passive-aggressive towards him.
Great name! Total props, Chris!
Whatever the case, he had no issue stealing, deceiving, and blackmailing Chris in an effort to upgrade himself from Chris 2.0 to just Chris. We'd probably put this one lower if it weren't for the fact that Chris is a pretty awful guy himself, so being the villain of his story isn't really that irredeemable. And hey, he's working that hairstyle. But it's time for a pretty massive power gap. Those last few may have had some screw-ups here and there, but these final contestants are those with truly terrible deeds. First, we have Amy, whose worst deed is being the worst sister imaginable. We talked about these two a bit in our ranking of the most toxic cartoon siblings, but we're more than willing to return if it means exposing this absolute menace even further. Amy makes Heather seem pleasant to be around in comparison. This girl treats her sister as a scapegoat, manipulates everyone into hating her, and even refuses to use her name.
Her name should be Spare Me.
I had to stop myself from writing Sammy so many times in the script. This girl manipulates the audience, people. Suffice to say, even though Sammy getting her booted wasn't necessarily right, we have no ill will towards her for it. The bronze medal of evil goes to Dave, whose worst deed is attempted murder. Now I just want to say, we get your frustration, Dave. You're a scrawny teenage boy with zero social skills, so being turned down by your crush probably feels pretty crappy, right? But what we don't understand is trying to kill the girl. As unfortunate as it is, Dave goes full on yandere when he figures out Sky has a boyfriend, who he doesn't know she already broke up with.
Truth is, I was going to dump him before I left, but ran out of time and...
Using his newfound powers of island landscape manipulation, he tries to harm Sky and even endanger her life to let his anger out. Though I will say, the finale still somehow treated him way harsher than he deserved. Runner-up to our top spot is Honey Boo Boo. Sugar, whose worst deed is also attempted murder. Yeah, like Dave, Sugar has actually tried to kill her fellow contestants. Near the finale, she forms an alliance with Sky, only to immediately betray it by trying to club her in her sleep. I wasn't gonna hit her on camera. Later, she knocks her off a cliff with zero remorse.
You mean I can do this?
We'd honestly be more surprised if Sugar did have any hesitation to kill someone. But come on, you all knew who was gonna top this list. Scarlet's worst deed is threatening to blow up the entire island. There have been some ruthless villains in Total Drama history, but using a bomb as leverage against Chris and the rest of the cast is a whole nother level of cruelty.
You and this island are gone.
Money makes people do stupid things, as this show illustrates in general, but most of the time, the line is drawn pretty clearly between going through ridiculously dangerous challenges and threatening mass destruction and mass murder. Hopefully, Max is diabolical enough to keep her in check.